Buongiorno. Hello. I'd like to do a very much final kind of recapitulation. The last recapitulation that I did was regarding my life, the psychology pertaining to my being and my history, very, very specific historical circumstances, and my family background, and how everything ended up on the basis of these interlocking factors. Contemporary modernity wants to do away with history and try to make sense of things nonetheless. I will argue, or have argued, and I continue to argue that that is nonsense, that you can't do it that way. You will end up with incoherent ideas and notions that are fundamentally false. It's not just that you will have a poorly fleshed out image, it's that your image will be really corrupted and wrong, and you'll come to the wrong conclusions, like it might be possible to come to if you were to simply assume that I had been brought up in modernity with all the attendant conditioning and all the knowledge that pertains to someone being brought up in modernity. Then certainly it would look as if my reactions and my attitudes were in a very bad spirit indeed, because I didn't know things that I ought to have known. Where was I? And if I didn't know them, maybe I'm lazy, maybe I'm rebellious and not listening, or maybe I'm narcissistic and into myself, so I don't see what's going on with other people. But then there's the other explanation too, is that I was just simply historically absent for the first 15 years of my life. Therefore, I could not have listened to what the teachers in a different culture, a different society were telling me, could not have learned from them, and didn't know what they were talking about when they first began to address me at the age of 15 and 16, as if I did already know all of these things. So the historical explanation makes sense of things. I would appear very wayward, very arrogant, very full of myself if I had, in fact, reached the age of 15, 16 within modernity without learning its fundamental lessons. But I was not there to learn them. And I think that people that profess to be knowledgeable about psychology or history or philosophy or anything that, generally speaking, people in intellectual authority claim or sort of presume themselves to know about, then they really do need to learn about the topics that they proclaim themselves to be experts in. I imagine there might even be people who say, well, of course we already know about history, but in my experience that's untrue, that generally speaking there's a tendency to presume that history is not very difficult, not hard to know, just different people, different moral actors doing different things, some doing very evil things, some doing good things. But basically, it's all known and knowable, and nothing really much to add. You can't really get something more in terms of your knowledge by talking to somebody who was actually there, who might tell you something. Because we already know that person has a little invisible black hat on their head and they're evil and they're just going to tell you the wrong thing anyway. So you've got to, the assumption that everything has already been known and the right labels have already been applied to the correct people concerned. That's one of the conceits of modernity. And it leads to very, not just inadequate, but very distorted, very ugly and wrong, very extremely wrong reasoning about things. So that's what I have found. People are lacking in the fundamental knowledge that they believe themselves to be already overwhelming experts in. Anyway. So I do feel healed now. I used to, and you know, very recently too, I had to, as I've explained, drink some red wine to allow my self-knowledge to appear at the same level as the rest of my cognitive processing and bring them to the same level, and then try to get them to combine and gel so that I could make sense of things. Because when you are living at a level that is to do with just logic, or to do with reason or rationality, and yet there is a situation that you keep encountering where people are not behaving in accordance with that reason and rationality, and then because you are attached to reason and rationality, you just forget it, but then the situation happens again, then there's a need to think, well, what is it that I'm missing? What am I not incorporating into my knowledge? And you have to actually access that part that you would dissociate from or repress. So generally things that don't accord with reason and rationality I have, and you know, everybody does to some extent tend to repress it until it comes back again and again to haunt you. So that was and that has been a large part of my process, is to catch the emotional aspect of my experience unawares, and to sort of capture it and bring it back and tame it and look after it and develop it and grow it up, so that I become one with myself and one with my knowledge, not just of myself but of my environment. It's all been done now. I feel healthy. The last video, but the biggest last video that I did was the final end point in self-understanding. And it's been a long journey, because I used philosophy, and I used my academic knowledge, and I used experimentation to get myself to this point. And here I am. I do feel really healthy. I do feel it's I'm relaxed within myself now. I'm not pushing towards something that's like evading and eluding me on the peripheries of my vision. I've got it squarely centered in the crosshairs. And that's a really good feeling. That's the culmination of a lot of effort, all working alone, and often usually with extreme antagonistic people telling me not to do what I'm doing, or that it's wrong, or something to that effect, because they know better. Self-proclaimed experts about your life. It's like they were there. Everything that happened to you, they were there, only they saw it more clearly. You know, every step of the way they had the omniscient vision, whereas you just had a partial or incorrect one. But they saw it. These are the self-proclaimed experts, except only they weren't there at all. They don't have that omniscient vision. They don't even have a rudimentary understanding of real history. It's just a cardboard cutout for them. And they don't listen, which is the worst thing that somebody who's a self-proclaimed expert can fail to do. They don't listen. They won't listen. But the insight that the insight that really kind of makes sense of it, in addition to what I said in that very important video I posted last time, is that basically because I was trapped in a situation where my father, in effect, would not allow me to grow up beyond, like I say, 15, 16. In effect, because he wouldn't talk to me, because he became virulently hostile, didn't like women, didn't seem to think that it was an infection or something, a massive hormonal stupidity or something to that effect. And because I was trapped in that state of being where I could not develop my personality in the negative aspect of it, I had to always be only sort of happy or positive and not say a single negative thing, even slightly so, ever. I believe I was stuck in, and I remain stuck in an idealistic stage where you kind of because you don't incorporate negativity, you have that expectation, which is very much in terms of, if I can put it this way, the eroticization of power. You think, well, there has to be a perfect situation where I can participate and I can harmonize with others, and it will be very well, it'll be like an arrival at a certain point that will be very definitive, very quintessentially, in some ways, like natural or normal in terms of how things are supposed to be if reality is perfectly ideal, and if everybody does as they are supposed to, then I can do my part and do as I'm supposed to, and I'll slot myself in, and it will be just a kind of a super normal, great, ideal reality. And that is what I had been looking for a lot of the time, until I was able to incorporate more knowledge of negativity into my psyche. It was this purely idealistic structure in my head that I was looking for outside of myself. And if I, like I said, could encapsulate it in words, it would be the eroticization of a true power relationship. And that's what that was, or what that would be. Isn't easy to explain in concrete terms, because I didn't understand or aim to understand it in concrete terms. I just thought I'd know it when I found it. So what happened instead is that if you walk around like it's kind of like a rosy spectacle approach to life, with this anticipation of the true power relationship that you would slot yourself into, you find you get a lot of people very quickly offside, because they react to the expectation by basically attacking the source of the expectation. Basically, what happens is that it brings the narcissist out. They immediately become very aggressive, and it's almost like they suddenly go, "I'm a narcissist. I can't do it. I don't like it. What are you asking me?" And they spill forth this antidote to the expectation. And so I, with my, well, I'd say like maybe or stunted, or sort of very restricted adolescent idealistic attitude, that I brought the narcs out all the time. They showed themselves to me just really quickly, really straight away. Maybe that was a good thing. Gave me a lot of negativity to process, lots of it, and basically that was good for me, because to process negativity was what I had to do to become mature, to become truly adult. I knew it, I felt it in my bones. I felt I had to take on as much knowledge of negativity as possible. The negative side of life, the ugly aspects, the degrading, the dangerous, the hostile, the painful in the sense of something that you would endure, like in a military exercise kind of pain, to build myself up. I had to gain maturity through exposure to pretty much any sort of negativity. Georges Bataille was the best guy for me in regards to that. Nietzsche was also helpful, pushed me quite a lot along that way in a anti-religious mode. And Bataille was very good. Mary Chira was also very good in disabusing me about colonialism and showing me how that actually worked in the structure of the power relation, how negative that was. So I was basically on a project to incorporate as much knowledge as possible of negativity. And the narcs helped, because every time I approached them with my rose-colored spectacles, they just basically hated it. I don't know what it is in terms of their reaction, but I brought them out of hiding. So then I processed that experience, and so it went. This has been a long journey, a couple of decades journey, but I'm now whole. I feel it in my bones, in my being. I feel very gratified and finally like I have arrived after a very difficult and dangerous journey. So thank you if you've listened to me, and if you've enjoyed the channel, and hope this kind of summary I've given will even help as well to make some sense of it all, where I was coming from and where I ended up. It is possible to heal. I think the fact that what happened to me happened in my teenage years, that's when the harsh and hostile discipline was imposed. That meant that it wasn't something that was really at the base of my being. I didn't have a pathology at the base of my being, but it sort of cut in during those middle teenage years. And that means that I had, luckily, a lot of very positive, very rich experiences from my earlier stages in life to draw from and to use to work on this project that I set for myself. The project of gaining maturity through understanding and incorporating the negative side of life. And Bataille talks about it as death. You incorporate knowledge of death, deterioration, degeneration. So that's the flip side of this totally positive, just idealistic, adolescent view about reality. Incorporate both sides, that's wholeness. Have one side, that's not wholeness at all. That's half wholeness, and that is in its own way extreme vulnerability.